Jacob McAllister's hands stopped mid-swing on the fence post when he saw her. A woman, standing at his gate, swaying like she might collapse any second. 15 years. 15 years since he'd let anyone pass that fence. 15 years since Emily died and took his voice with her. Now this stranger stood there clutching a letter calling him husband. A husband he'd never agreed to be. A bride he'd never ordered. A lie that was about to crack open everything he'd buried. This is their story. Stay until the end and comment your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The Wyoming summer of 1885 showed no mercy to anyone foolish enough to travel its roads unprepared. Rose Thornton was that foolish. She'd been walking for 6 miles since the stagecoach driver refused to take the muddy turnoff toward Blackwater Ranch. Her boots had split along the seams 2 miles back. Her dress, which had been a respectable brown when she left Boston 8 weeks ago, now carried the dirt of every state between Massachusetts and Wyoming. But she kept walking. She had no other choice. The letter in her pocket said Jacob McAllister. The letter said husband. The letter said home. Rose had staked everything on that letter. Her last wages. Her good name. Her final thread of hope. She saw the fence first, solid posts stretching toward the mountains. Then she saw the man. He stood with his back to the road, swinging a hammer at a fence rail with the kind of rhythm that spoke of years of practice. Tall, broad shoulders straining against a worn shirt. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Rose gripped the fence post to steady herself. The world had been tilting sideways for the past hour. Hunger and exhaustion were catching up. "Mr. Grant," she called out. Her voice came out wrong, raw, broken from weeks of not speaking to anyone. "Mr. Jacob McAllister." The hammer stopped. He didn't turn around immediately, just stood there frozen like her voice had struck him harder than any physical blow could. Then slowly he turned. Rose's breath caught. His face was carved from stone and grief. Strong jaw, gray eyes the color of storm clouds, and lines that spoke of a man who'd forgotten how to smile. A scar ran along his left jawbone, white against sun-darkened skin. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Empty, like looking into abandoned rooms where no one had lived for years. "Who's asking?" His voice was rough, unused, like he'd forgotten how talking worked. "I'm Rose Thornton." She pulled the letter from her pocket with trembling fingers. "I'm your wife, your mail-order bride. I've come from Boston." The silence that followed was terrible. Jacob McAllister stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. Then he looked at the letter in her hand, then back at her face. "My what?" "Your bride, sir. You wrote to the Westward Hearts Agency 6 months ago. You paid for my passage. I have your letter right here." She held it out through the fence rails. The paper shook visibly. He didn't take it. "I never wrote to any agency." Rose felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "I said I never wrote to any agency." His voice was flat, hard. "I never sent any letter. I never paid for anyone's passage. And I sure as hell didn't ask for a bride." "But—" Rose looked at the letter, then at him, then at the letter again. "This has your name, your address, your signature. The agency confirmed everything. They said, I don't care what they said." He turned back to his fence, dismissing her. "Someone played you false, miss. I suggest you head back to wherever you came from." Rose stood there, unable to move. 8 weeks of travel. Every penny she'd saved for 3 years. Her position, her room, her references, she'd burned them all for this moment, for this man, for this lie. "I can't go back. Not my concern. I have no money. The stagecoach won't take me further. I spent everything getting here." Jacob's hammer came down hard on a nail. "Still not my concern. Mr. McAllister, you need to leave my property, miss. Rose felt something crack inside her. Pride, maybe, or hope, or the last wall holding back weeks of suppressed terror. "I have nowhere to go." Her voice broke and she hated herself for it. "I left everything. My position, my home, my name. I believed your letter. I believed—" "It wasn't my letter." "Then whose was it?" He stopped hammering. Didn't turn. But she saw his shoulders tense. "I don't know." His voice dropped. "And it's not my problem to figure out." Rose's knees gave out. She didn't mean to fall. One moment she was standing and the next she was on the ground, her fingers still wrapped around the fence post, the world spinning wildly around her. She heard boots on dirt. Felt rough hands grip her shoulders. "Hey, hey!" Jacob's face appeared above her, his brow furrowed. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday. Some bread." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Water." "The stagecoach gave me some. This morning." He swore. Low and vicious. Words Rose had never heard spoken aloud. "Can you stand?" "I think." She tried. Failed. "No." Jacob looked at her for a long moment. She could see the war playing out across his face, the desire to walk away fighting against something else, something that looked almost like pain. "Storm's coming," he finally said. "Big one. It'll hit by nightfall." Rose didn't have the strength to respond. "If I leave you out here, you'll die, either from the storm or the heat or some animal." He released her shoulders and stood. "I'm not having that on my conscience." "Mr. McAllister?" "Shut up. Don't thank me. This changes nothing." He reached down and lifted her like she weighed nothing. "You stay one night. One. Tomorrow I drive you to town and we figure out what the hell is going on." Rose wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some dignity. But she was being carried and she was so tired. And for the first time in 8 weeks, someone was touching her without wanting something from her. She let her head fall against his shoulder and stopped fighting. The ranch house was exactly what Rose expected from a man who'd been alone for 15 years. Clean but empty. Functional but lifeless. Furniture placed for necessity, not comfort. No curtains on windows. No pictures on walls. No signs that anyone actually lived here rather than merely existed. Jacob set her down in a chair by the cold stove and immediately moved away, putting distance between them. "Stay there." He pumped water into a kettle, movements sharp and efficient. "I'll make food. You eat. Then you sleep. We don't talk. We don't get to know each other. This is a transaction of necessity, nothing more." Rose nodded, though he wasn't looking at her. "The spare room is through that door. Lock it from inside if it makes you feel safer." "Thank you." "I said don't thank me." He turned, and for just a moment, Rose saw something flash in those dead gray eyes. Anger, maybe, or fear. "I didn't ask for you. I don't want you here. First light tomorrow, you're gone." He went outside, then slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Rose sat in the silence he left behind and let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. Someone had forged a letter. Someone had sent her across the country on a lie. Someone had stolen her money, her hope, her future. And now she was sitting in a stranger's house, a stranger who clearly despised her very existence, with nothing but a useless piece of paper and the clothes on her back. Rose pulled the letter from her pocket and read it again. "Miss Thornton, I am a rancher in Wyoming Territory, seeking a woman of good character for marriage. My property is substantial, and my intentions honorable. I require a partner who can withstand frontier conditions and is not afraid of hard work. If you are willing, the Westward Hearts Agency will arrange your passage. I have enclosed payment in full. Respectfully, Jacob McAllister." The handwriting was neat, professional, the kind of penmanship taught in good schools. Rose thought about Jacob McAllister's rough hands, his unused voice, his empty eyes. This letter didn't match the man. The words were too polished, too formal. Someone had done this deliberately. But who and why? The door opened. Jacob returned with firewood, not looking at her as he knelt by the stove. Mr. McAllister, I told you. Someone forged your signature. Someone knew enough about you to write this letter to include details about your ranch to make it convincing enough that an agency believed it. He stilled. What's your point? My point is that this wasn't random. Someone wanted me here. Someone wanted to use me to get to you. Jacob stood slowly. When he turned, his face had changed. The emptiness was gone, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. Who sent you? Really? No one sent me. I told you. Who do you work for? He stepped closer. Is it Crane? Did Victor Crane put you up to this? Rose shrank back in her chair. I don't know who that is. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. Her voice rose despite her exhaustion. I'm a teacher, or I was. I lost my position. I saw an advertisement for mail-order brides, and I answered it because I had no other options. That's the truth. Jacob studied her face with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. A teacher, he repeated flatly. At the Harrington School for Young Ladies in Boston. Until 6 months ago. What happened 6 months ago? Rose's jaw tightened. That's none of your concern. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise maybe at having his own words thrown back at him. Fair enough. He turned back to the stove, lighting the fire with practiced movements. But if I find out you're lying about any of this, if you're working with Crane or anyone else trying to take my land, I'm not working for anyone. I don't want your land. I just wanted... She stopped, throat tight. What? A home. The word came out broken. I just wanted a home. Jacob didn't respond, but his movements at the stove slowed, and the rigid set of his shoulders seemed to ease just slightly. I'll make stew, he said finally. You eat, you sleep, you leave tomorrow. That's the beginning and end of whatever this is. Rose nodded, though he couldn't see her. She didn't believe him. Something had shifted in the air between them, something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Whatever this was, it wasn't ending tomorrow. But the stew was plain but good. Beef, potatoes, carrots. The kind of simple food that filled empty spaces and warmed cold bones. Rose ate 3 bowls before her stomach finally stopped hurting. Jacob sat across from her, eating his own meal in silence, his eyes carefully avoiding hers. He moved like a man who'd perfected the art of sharing space without actually being present. Every gesture was minimal, every sound muted. You've been alone a long time, Rose said. I told you we're not talking. I'm not asking for your life story. I'm making an observation. She set down her spoon. 15 years. His jaw tightened. Who told you that? The letter mentioned it. Said you'd been a widower for 15 years. I wasn't a widower. His voice was harsh. We never married. She died before... He stopped, seeming surprised he'd said that much. It doesn't matter. It matters to you. Miss Thornton. Rose. Miss Thornton. He stood abruptly, taking his bowl to the basin. I don't know who wrote that letter. I don't know why they sent you here. But I'm not going to sit around swapping tragic histories like we're at some church social. You're a stranger. You'll remain a stranger. Tomorrow you'll be gone, and I'll go back to my life, and that'll be the end of it. Rose watched him wash his bowl with angry, jerking movements. What if it isn't? What? The end of it. She stood too, her legs steadier now that she'd eaten. Someone went to a lot of trouble to bring me here, Mr. McAllister. They forged documents. They paid an agency. They arranged months of correspondence. That's not a prank. That's a plan. Jacob turned, water dripping from his hands. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that whoever did this wanted something, and until we figure out what that is, neither of us is safe. I can take care of myself. Can you? Rose stepped closer, and she saw him tense. You said a name earlier. Victor Crane. You thought I was working for him. which means you have enemies, which means there's a reason someone might want to get a person inside your home. You're not inside my home. I'm standing in your kitchen. His eyes flashed. By accident. Are you sure about that? The question hung between them. Rose watched understanding dawn on Jacob's face. Understanding and something that looked almost like fear. If Crane is behind this, then I'm either his pawn or his weapon. And either way, the game isn't over just because I leave tomorrow. Jacob stared at her for a long moment. Then he moved past her, grabbing a coat from a hook by the door. Where are you going? To check the property. He didn't look at her. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone. Mr. McAllister. Anyone. He paused at the threshold. There's a rifle above the fireplace. You know how to use one. I'm from Boston. That's a no. He swore under his breath. Don't touch it then. Just stay inside and stay quiet. I'll be back within the hour. He was gone before she could respond. Rose stood in the silent kitchen, listening to his footsteps recede, and felt the first real tendril of fear curl through her stomach. She hadn't been afraid before. Too exhausted, too hungry, too focused on survival to waste energy on fear. But now, alone in this empty house in the middle of nowhere, she began to understand exactly how vulnerable she was. Someone had planned this. Someone had sent her here. Someone wanted her inside Jacob McAllister's home. Why Rose moved through the house slowly, her teacher's eyes cataloging details. The bare walls, the sparse furniture, the single armchair by the fireplace worn into the exact shape of one body, the kitchen that held supplies for one person, one plate, one cup, one set of utensils. This wasn't a home. This was a tomb. Jacob McAllister had buried himself here. 15 years of grief and isolation had stripped everything human from these rooms. Everything soft, everything comfortable, everything that might remind him he was still alive. Rose understood that kind of burial. She'd done it herself in different ways. The spare room was at the back of the house, small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a single window facing the mountains. The sheets were fresh, the room dust-free. He kept it ready, Rose realized. Even though he claimed to want no one here, even though he'd lived alone for 15 years, he kept a guest room prepared. Hope, maybe. Or habit. Or something else entirely. She found the letter on the dresser. Not her letter, a different one. Older. The paper yellowed and fragile, the handwriting feminine and flowing. My dearest Jacob, I count the days until I can see you again. The work here is hard but good. We are saving lives, I think, or at least giving comfort where we can. But every night I dream of your ranch, your mountains, your face. Soon, my love. Soon I will be there, and we will never be apart again. Forever yours, Emily. Rose set the letter down carefully, her chest aching. Emily. The woman who'd died before they could marry. The woman whose ghost still lived in these empty rooms. Jacob McAllister hadn't just lost someone he loved. He'd lost his entire future, his plans, his dreams, his reason for building this place. And someone had sent Rose here to fill that empty space. The cruelty of it took her breath away. You shouldn't be reading that. Rose spun around. Jacob stood in the doorway, his face carved from granite, his eyes fixed on the letter in her hands. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Put it down. She did immediately. Mr. McAllister, get out of this room. I wasn't trying to intrude. Get out. Rose moved past him quickly, her heart pounding. She could feel the rage radiating off him, tightly controlled, but terrible in its intensity. I found it on the dresser, she said when she was back in the main room. I wasn't searching through your things. It doesn't matter. His voice was ice. You saw what you saw. Now you know. She died and I stopped living. That's all there is. That's not... I said that's all there is. He moved past her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the tension vibrating through him. The property is clear. No signs of anyone watching. We'll leave for town at first light. What about what I said about the plan? I'll deal with it after you're gone. What if you can't? Not your problem. He grabbed a blanket from a chest and threw it on the armchair. I'll sleep out here. Take the spare room. Lock the door. Mr. McAllister, I can't talk to you anymore tonight. His voice cracked just slightly. I can't look at you and think about her and try to figure out who sent you and why. I need you to go in that room and close the door and let me have silence. Please. It was the please that broke her. Rose nodded and retreated without another word. She closed the door, locked it as he'd asked, and sat on the edge of the narrow bed with Emily's ghost pressing against her shoulders. She didn't sleep for a long time. Outside, she could hear Jacob moving around, stoking the fire, pacing the floor. Once she heard something that might have been a sob quickly suppressed. 15 years, she thought. 15 years of carrying grief alone. And now someone had sent her here to crack it all open again. Rose didn't know who had done this or why. But she made a silent promise in that dark room that she would find out. For Jacob, whose pain had become a prison. For herself, whose hope had been weaponized. For Emily, whose memory was being used by someone who had no right to it. Tomorrow she would leave, but this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Rose woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The scent was so domestic, so normal, that she expected to open her eyes and find herself back in Mrs. Harrington's house late for morning lessons. Then memory crashed back. Wyoming. Jacob McAllister. The forged letter. The empty house. Emily. She dressed quickly in her travel-worn clothes and emerged into the main room. Jacob stood at the stove, his back to her. He'd changed his shirt and shaved the first signs of personal care she'd seen from him. His movements were still sharp and economical, but something had shifted overnight. Sit. He nodded toward the table. Food's ready. You didn't have to. You're leaving. Can't have you fainting on the road. Rose sat. He set a plate in front of her without meeting her eyes. Bacon, eggs, fresh bread, real butter. A cup of coffee so strong she could smell it from across the table. This is more than I expected. Don't read into it. He sat across from her with his own plate. I cook for myself every day. Making extra isn't a hardship. They ate in silence for several minutes. Rose studied him over the rim of her coffee cup, the way his hands moved the tension in his jaw, the shadows under his eyes that said he hadn't slept either. I want to apologize, she said finally, for reading that letter. Forget it. I can't. She set down her cup. Someone I loved left me letters too. Private things, words that were just for me. If anyone had read them, I said forget it. But his voice was softer now. You didn't know. Still, I'm sorry. Jacob looked at her then, really looked for the first time since she'd arrived. His gray eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. You said you were a teacher. Yes. What happened? Rose's hands tightened around her cup. I told you that's not... You read my letter. Consider us even. Fair point. Rose took a breath. I was accused of theft. A necklace belonging to the headmistress's wife. They found it in my room. You didn't take it. No, but no one believed me. She forced her voice to stay steady. I was a charity case, Mr. McAllister. A teacher's daughter who got her position through connection rather than qualification. When it came down to my word against the families, you lost. I lost everything. My position, my reputation, my references. No school would hire me after that. Jacob was quiet for a moment. Who really took it? The eldest son. He needed money for gambling debts. I caught him with it and he... She stopped. He decided to make sure I couldn't tell anyone. By planting it on you. By planting it on me. The silence stretched between them. Then Jacob stood gathering plates. I believe you. Rose blinked. What? I said I believe you. He dumped the plates in the basin, still not looking at her. I've known liars my whole life. You're not one. Something warm bloomed in Rose's chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He turned around, leaning against the counter. I've been thinking about what you said last night, about the plan. And you might be right. Crane has been after my land for years. He's tried legal tricks, intimidation, everything short of violence. Sending a woman here. His jaw tightened. It's the kind of scheme he'd enjoy. So what do? We go to town. We talk to Eli Porter at the general store. He's the only one I halfway trust. We figure out who contacted that agency and why. Jacob's eyes met hers. You're involved now. Whether either of us likes it or not. Until we know what's going on, you're safer with me than alone. Rose stared at him. Yesterday, you couldn't wait to be rid of me. Yesterday, I thought this was a mistake. Now I think it's a weapon. He pushed off from the counter. I'd rather have the weapon where I can see it. That's very flattering. It's not meant to be. But something flickered across his face almost impossibly, like the ghost of a smile. Get your things. We leave in 10 minutes. Rose stood, her heart beating faster than it should. Something had changed. She wasn't sure what or why, but the wall between them had cracked, just slightly, just enough to let in a sliver of light. Mr. McAllister. He paused at the door. Whatever happens in town, whatever we find out, I want you to know I didn't come here to hurt you. I didn't know about any of this. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once, shortly. I know. He opened the door. That's why you're still here. He walked out into the morning sun, and Rose allowed herself one moment of hope. It was fragile. It was probably foolish. But it was there. Whatever this was, whatever it became, she wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he. The wagon rattled along the dirt road toward Silver Creek, and Rose gripped the seat as Jacob pushed the horses harder than necessary. You're going to break a wheel, she said. I know my own roads. That's not an answer. Jacob didn't respond. His jaw was set in that hard line she was beginning to recognize as his default expression. Whatever softness had crept into his voice that morning had vanished the moment they'd left the ranch. Who is Victor Crane? Nobody you need to worry about. You accused me of working for him last night. I think I've earned an explanation. The horses slowed slightly. Jacob's hands tightened on the reins. Crane owns the bank in Silver Creek. He also owns about half the territory one way or another. He's been trying to get my land for 5 years. Why your land? Railroads coming through. My property sits right in the path of where they want to lay track. Crane's been buying up land all along the route, planning to sell it back at 10 times the price. And you won't sell. I'd rather burn it to the ground. The venom in his voice made Rose's stomach tighten. So you think he sent me here? As what, some kind of trap? I don't know what I think yet. Jacob glanced at her sideways. That's why we're going to see Eli. The friend who might have written the letter? He's the only one who knows my business well enough. The only one who'd have the details to make that letter convincing. Would he do something like this? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Eli's been after me for years to stop living like a dead man. He thinks he knows what's best for everyone. But forgery, fraud. He shook his head. I don't want to believe it. But you think it's possible? I think I don't know what people are capable of anymore. The bitterness in his voice was old and deep. Rose recognized it. She'd carried the same bitterness herself ever since Marcus Harrington had smiled at her while guards searched her room for jewelry she'd never touched. People disappoint you, she said quietly. It's what they do. Jacob looked at her then, really looked. That's a dark view for a teacher. Former teacher. And I learned it the hard way. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. or recognition. The knowledge that they were both people who'd been broken by trust betrayed. Eli's store is at the end of Main Street, Jacob said, turning back to the road. We go in, we get answers, we leave. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't draw attention. I'm a stranger in a mud-covered dress. I'm going to draw attention no matter what. Then keep your head down and let me do the talking. Rose bit back a sharp response. She wasn't used to being told what to do. But this was his territory, his fight, and she was just a pawn. Someone had dropped into the middle of it. For now, she would follow his lead. For now. Silver Creek was larger than Rose had expected. A proper main street with boardwalks on both sides. A church at one end, a saloon at the other. People moved along the walks, going about their business, but she noticed how many of them stopped to stare as Jacob's wagon rolled past. They're looking at us. They're looking at you. Jacob kept his eyes forward. I don't come to town often. When I do, I'm alone. Your news. Wonderful. Keep your head down. Rose did as he asked, but she could feel the weight of curious eyes pressing against her skin. A woman in a shop doorway whispered to her companion. A man on the boardwalk tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. A group of children pointed and giggled before their mother hushed them. Popular place, Rose murmured. Small town, nothing else to do but gossip. Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a building with a hand-painted sign, Porter's General Goods. He climbed down without offering her help, then seemed to catch himself and turned back, extending a hand. Thank you, Rose said, taking it. Don't thank me, just move. The store was dim and cluttered, packed with everything from flour sacks to farming equipment to bolts of fabric. Behind the counter stood a man in his 50s, silver threading through dark hair with kind eyes, and a merchant's smile. Jacob, I'll be damned. Twice in 1 month, the world must be ending. Eli. Jacob's voice was flat. We need to talk. Private. The smile faltered. Eli's eyes moved to Rose, taking in her travel-worn appearance with growing confusion. Who's this? That's what we're here to discuss. Eli looked between them, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. Come to the back. Martha's visiting her sister, so we won't be disturbed. He led them through a door into a storage room, crowded with crates and barrels. The moment the door closed, Jacob turned on him. Did you do it? Do what? The letter Eli. The mail-order bride scheme. Did you write to that agency pretending to be me? Eli's face went pale. Jacob, don't lie to me. Jacob stepped closer, and Rose saw his hands clench into fists. I've known you 30 years. I can tell when you're lying. Did you do it? The silence stretched between them, thick and terrible. Yes. Jacob's fist connected with Eli's jaw before Rose could even process what was happening. The older man stumbled back into a stack of crates, hand pressed to his bleeding lip. Jacob. Rose grabbed his arm. Stop! You son of a bitch! Jacob's voice was shaking. You forged my name. You used my signature. You sent this woman across the country on a lie. I was trying to help you. Help me! Jacob lunged forward again, but Rose threw herself between them. Stop it! Both of you! She pressed her hands against Jacob's chest, feeling the rage trembling through him. This isn't helping anything. Get out of my way. No. She met his eyes, refusing to back down. You want answers? Then let him talk. You can hit him again afterward if you still want to. Something in her voice reached him. Jacob stepped back, breathing hard, his gray eyes burning with fury. Talk, he growled at Eli. Talk fast. Eli straightened slowly, wiping blood from his chin. I know what I did was wrong. I've known it from the start. But Jacob, you've been dying out here for 15 years. Dying slow and alone and refusing to let anyone help you. That was my choice. It was a stupid choice. Eli's voice rose. Emily's been dead for 15 years. 15 years and you're still punishing yourself for surviving. You don't talk to anyone. You don't let anyone close. You come to town once a month for supplies, and you don't even look people in the eye. That's my business. It's everyone's business when a good man throws his life away. Eli took a breath, steadying himself. I heard about the agency from a traveling salesman. He said they matched lonely ranchers with women looking for fresh starts. I thought if I could just get someone out here, someone who might understand. You thought you'd trick me into marriage. I thought I'd give you a reason to live again. The words hung in the air. Rose watched Jacob's face, saw the war between anger and something else, something that looked almost like grief. You had no right, Jacob said quietly. No right to make that choice for me, and no right to use this woman as a pawn in your little scheme. I know. Eli looked at Rose for the first time. Miss, I'm sorry, truly. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I paid the agency myself. Your money should have gone to your passage and nothing else. The agency told me Jacob had paid, Rose said. They showed me receipts with his name. Eli frowned. That doesn't make sense. I paid in cash. I never used Jacob's name on any financial documents. Rose felt something cold settle in her stomach. Then someone else was involved. Someone who knew about your arrangement and used it for their own purposes. Jacob and Eli exchanged looks. Crane, Jacob said. Victor Crane. Eli shook his head. How would he even know about this? You tell me. Who else knew what you were doing? No one. I swear. I contacted the agency myself, made all the arrangements in secret. Letters, Rose said suddenly. You wrote letters. Where did you send them from? Eli's face changed. The post office. Here in town. Who runs the post office? The silence was answer enough. Crane owns the postmaster, Jacob said flatly. Has for years. He reads every piece of mail that goes through this town. So he knew about Eli's plan. Rose's mind was racing. He knew a woman was coming. He knew the perfect opportunity to get someone inside your home. But why? Eli demanded. What would he gain from sending you there? A witness. Jacob's voice was hard. Someone who could claim I did something, said something, made some kind of deal. Someone who could testify in his favor when he takes me to court. Rose's blood ran cold. You think he sent me here to frame you? I think Crane doesn't do anything without a reason. And I think whatever that reason is, we haven't seen it yet. The door to the storage room burst open. A man stood in the doorway, tall, well-dressed, with silver hair swept back from a handsome face and eyes the color of dirty ice. Jacob McAllister. His voice was smooth as oil. What a pleasant surprise. And who is this lovely creature? Jacob stepped in front of Rose. Get out, Crane. Now. This is a public establishment. I have every right to be here. Crane's eyes moved over Rose with slow, deliberate appreciation. I don't believe we've met, miss. Victor Crane at your service. I own the bank here in Silver Creek. She's not interested in meeting you. Let the lady speak for herself, Jacob. You can't keep her locked away on that ranch forever. Crane smiled, and Rose felt her skin crawl. I heard there was a new arrival in town. A mail-order bride, they're saying. How romantic. Leave, Jacob growled. I'm just being neighborly. Crane's smile widened. After all, we're going to be seeing a lot of each other. Once the railroad comes through, this whole territory is going to change. You might want to reconsider your position, Jacob, before things get complicated. Is that a threat? It's advice. Free advice from a friend. Crane tipped his hat to Rose. A pleasure, miss. I'm sure we'll meet again soon. He was gone before anyone could respond. Jacob's hands were shaking. Rose could see the effort it took for him not to go after Crane, not to start a fight in the middle of town. He knows, she said quietly. About the letter, about everything. Of course he knows. That bastard knows everything that happens in this town. Then we need to be careful. Rose turned to Eli. Is there anything else? Anything that might tell us what Crane is planning? Eli's face was gray. There's been talk about the railroad. They're supposed to announce the final route next month. Whoever owns the land along that route is going to be very, very wealthy. And if Jacob doesn't sell, Crane loses millions. He's been buying up land for 2 years based on inside information. If Jacob holds out, the whole deal falls apart. So he needs me gone. Jacob's voice was bitter. One way or another. Or he needs something he can hold over you. Rose met his eyes. A scandal. A crime. A reason for the law to take your land. And you're the perfect weapon. I'm not anyone's weapon. Her voice was fiercer than she intended. I didn't come here to destroy you, Mr. McAllister. I came here looking for a home. I know. His eyes softened just for a moment. But Crane doesn't care what you intended. He'll use you however he can. Then we don't let him. How do you propose we do that? Rose straightened her shoulders. I don't know yet. But I didn't survive Boston society and a false accusation and 8 weeks on the road just to become a pawn in someone else's game. If Crane wants a fight, I'll give him one. Jacob stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise maybe, or respect. You've got backbone, Miss Thornton. I'll give you that. Rose. What? My name is Rose. If we're going to fight together, you might as well use it. A pause. Then slowly, Rose. Her name sounded different in his voice. Softer. Almost gentle. So, what do we do now? Eli asked, breaking the moment. We go back to the ranch. Jacob grabbed Rose's arm, pulling her toward the door. We figure out what Crane's planning. And we make sure whatever trap he's setting, we're not in it when it springs. Wait! Eli caught his arm. I'm sorry, Jacob. I know I should have told you. I know I should have asked. But watching you waste away out there, watching you give up on everything, I couldn't stand it anymore. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook off Eli's hand. You don't get to decide how I live, Eli. You don't get to forgive my pain or fix my grief. That's mine. It belongs to me. I know. But, Jacob paused at the door. I understand why you did it, and I'll try not to hate you for it. He walked out. Rose followed, her heart pounding. They were halfway to the wagon when a woman stepped into their path. Jacob McAllister. She was older, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that could have cut glass. Mrs. Harwell. Jacob's voice was carefully neutral. I heard there was a woman at your ranch. Mrs. Harwell's eyes moved to Rose, assessing and dismissing in one swift glance. A mail-order bride, they're saying. From back east. What of it? What of it? A respectable man living alone for years suddenly takes up with a strange woman. Mrs. Harwell's lip curled. We have standards in this town, Mr. McAllister. Christian standards. Then it's fortunate I don't live in town. Don't be smart with me. She stepped closer. I know your type, girl. I know what women like you are after. Money. Security. A way to trap a decent man into... That's enough. Rose blinked. Jacob had moved, placing himself between her and Mrs. Harwell, his voice hard as iron. Miss Thornton is under my protection. Whatever she is or isn't is none of your concern. Protection. Mrs. Harwell's eyes narrowed. Is that what you're calling it? Call it whatever you like. But speak ill of her again, and you'll deal with me. The older woman's face flushed red. You'll regret this, McAllister. Both of you will regret this. She swept past them without another word. Rose released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you. Don't thank me. She's a viper. Always has been. Jacob helped her into the wagon. But now the whole town knows you're here. By nightfall, everyone within 50 miles will be talking. Is that a problem? It's a complication. He climbed up beside her. Crane will use it, somehow. Then we deal with it. Jacob looked at her sideways. You keep saying we. Is there a problem with that? A pause. Then something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. No, I reckon there isn't. The ride back to the ranch was faster than the ride into town. Jacob pushed the horses hard, his expression troubled. Rose didn't try to make conversation. She was too busy turning over everything they'd learned. Crane knew about her. Crane had probably known from the beginning. Whatever scheme he was running, she was part of it whether she wanted to be or not. The question was what to do about it. I'm not leaving, she said as the ranch came into view. Jacob's hands tightened on the reins. What? I know you planned to send me to town, to find me work somewhere else. But that was before Crane showed his hand. She turned to face him. If I leave now, he wins. Whatever trap he's setting, he gets to spring it without opposition. And if you stay, then we figure out what he's planning together. We fight back together. This isn't your fight, Rose. It became my fight the moment someone used me as a weapon against you. Her voice was firm. I didn't ask for this. Neither did you. But we're in it now. Both of us. Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. He sat there for a long moment staring at his hands. I haven't had anyone on my side in 15 years, he said quietly. I don't know if I remember how. Then we learned together. He looked at her then, really looked. And for the first time, Rose saw something in his eyes besides pain and emptiness. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. All right, he said finally. You stay. Not as a bride, not as charity, but as... He stopped searching for the right word. A partner. A partner. He tested the word. For now. For now, Rose agreed. They climbed down from the wagon, and Jacob moved to unhitch the horses. Rose watched him work her mind, still churning. Jacob. He glanced over his shoulder. The letter, the one Emily wrote. How did it end up in the spare room? His hand stilled on the harness. I put it there. Years ago, when I first set up that room. He turned to face her. Why? Who else has access to your house? Nobody. I don't let anyone. He stopped, understanding dawning. You think someone's been in the house. I think the letter was on the dresser right where I'd see it. I think it was placed there deliberately. And I think whoever did it wanted me to find it. Jacob's face went pale. Crane. Or someone working for him. Someone who knows your history. Someone who knew exactly which wounds to press. But why? What would he gain from you finding that letter? Rose thought about it. About the way she'd felt reading Emily's words. About the way her heart had ached for Jacob's loss. Sympathy, she said slowly. He wanted me to feel sorry for you, to connect with you, to lower my guard. But you didn't. I almost did. And that's the point, isn't it? She moved closer. Crane doesn't just want to take your land, he wants to destroy you. And he's willing to use everything your past, your pain me to do it. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. I'll kill him. No, you won't. That's exactly what he wants. Rose put her hand on his arm, feeling him tense under her touch. If you attack him, he wins. If you lose control, he wins. The only way to beat him is to stay calm and stay smart. I'm not good at calm. Then I'll be calm for both of us. He looked down at her hand on his arm. For a moment, Rose thought he would pull away. Instead, he covered her hand with his. I don't know why you're doing this, he said quietly. You could have walked away. Should have walked away. I told you, I don't run. Everyone runs eventually. Then I'll be the exception. Something shifted in his eyes. That wall she'd been seeing since the moment they met, the one built from grief and isolation, and 15 years of silence, cracked just a little bit more. We should go inside, he said. Check the house. Make sure nothing else has been disturbed." "All right." He released her hand and moved toward the house. Rose followed, her heart beating faster than it should. They searched the house together, room by room. Nothing seemed out of place except for the letter, which Jacob picked up carefully and placed back in the trunk with Emily's other things. "I should have burned these years ago," he said, staring down at the trunk. "No, you shouldn't have." He looked at her. "She was part of your life," Rose said simply. "Part of who you are. You don't have to destroy her memory just because it hurts." "Easy for you to say." "It's not easy. Nothing about this is easy." She moved to stand beside him. "But you can honor what you had without letting it trap you. You can remember her without being buried with her." Jacob closed the trunk slowly. "Is that what I've been doing? Burying myself?" "Isn't it?" The question hung between them. Jacob didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. "I'll make dinner," Rose said finally. "You should rest. It's been a long day." "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." She touched his arm again briefly. "Let me help Jacob. That's all I'm asking." He nodded slowly. And when she walked away toward the kitchen, she felt his eyes following her. Something was changing between them. Something neither of them had expected. Rose didn't know what it was yet. Didn't know if it was good or bad or somewhere in between. But as she started preparing dinner in a stranger's kitchen, in a house she'd never meant to enter, in a territory she'd never meant to stay in, she felt for the first time in months like she might be exactly where she was supposed to be. The trouble with that feeling was that Victor Crane wouldn't let it last. And somewhere out there in the gathering dusk, he was already planning his next move. Rose just prayed they'd be ready for it when it came. 3 days passed without incident, and Rose began to wonder if they'd been wrong about Crane. She shouldn't have wondered. The morning of the 4th day started like the others. Rose made breakfast while Jacob tended the horses. They ate together in comfortable silence, the kind that had stopped feeling awkward somewhere around day 2. "I'm going to check the north fence," Jacob said, pushing back from the table. "Should be back by noon." "I'll start on the mending." He paused at the door. "Rose." "Yes." "Keep the rifle close, just in case." She nodded. He'd taught her to load and fire it 2 days ago, his hands steady and patient as he guided hers. She still wasn't a good shot, but she could hit a target if she had to. "Be careful," she said. Something flickered in his eyes. "Always am." He was gone before she could respond. Rose cleared the dishes and settled into her chair by the window with Jacob's pile of mending. The work was meditative, her needle moving in steady rhythm while her mind wandered. She was thinking about Jacob, about the way he'd started looking at her when he thought she wasn't watching, about the way his voice had softened over the past few days, about the way he'd touched her hand yesterday, just briefly, when she'd handed him his coffee. Something was growing between them, something neither of them had named. Rose wasn't sure she was ready to name it. The sound of hooves pulled her from her thoughts. She set down the mending and moved to the window. A group of riders was approaching from the road, 5 of them led by a man on a black horse. Victor Crane. Rose's blood went cold. She grabbed the rifle from above the fireplace, checking that it was loaded like Jacob had taught her. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them steady. The riders stopped at the fence. Crane dismounted, straightening his jacket with deliberate care. "Miss Thornton?" His voice carried across the yard. "I know you're in there. We need to talk." Rose didn't answer. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want a conversation." Surely that's not too much to ask. Still, she said nothing. "Very well." Crane's voice hardened. "If you won't come out, I'll say what I have to say from here, and I'll say it loudly enough for my men to hear." A pause. Then, "I know who you are, Miss Thornton. Rose Thornton, formerly of Boston. Formerly employed at the Harrington School for Young Ladies, until you were dismissed for theft." Rose's heart stopped. "Oh yes, I know all about it. The necklace, the accusations. The way you fled in disgrace rather than face justice. Crane's voice was smooth as poison. I wonder what the good people of Silver Creek would think if they knew Jacob McAllister was harboring a criminal. Rose's hands tightened on the rifle. I'm not a thief, she called through the door. Those charges were false. Were they? The Harrington family seems quite certain. In fact, I have a letter from Mrs. Harrington herself describing your crimes in detail. Crane held up a piece of paper. Would you like me to read it aloud? What do you want? I want you to leave. Today. Now. Crane's voice dropped the pretense of civility. Pack your things, get on a horse and ride away from here. If you do, I'll keep this information to myself. If you don't, If I don't, then I'll make sure everyone in the territory knows what kind of woman Jacob McAllister has taken into his home. And when the railroad committee asks about his character, I'll have quite a story to tell. Rose felt sick. Crane wasn't just threatening her, he was threatening Jacob's land, his livelihood, everything he'd built. Jacob didn't know about my past, she said. He took me in because I had nowhere else to go. That's a touching story. But do you think anyone will believe it? Crane laughed. A disgraced woman shows up on a lonely rancher's doorstep with a forged letter, and he just happens to let her stay. No, Miss Thornton. People will believe what I tell them to believe. And I'll tell them that Jacob McAllister is either a fool or a conspirator. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. And right now business requires that Jacob McAllister sell his land. Crane stepped closer to the fence. You're in my way, Miss Thornton. Remove yourself or I'll remove you. One way or another. Rose raised the rifle. I know how to use this, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. And I know you're trespassing on private property. Leave now. Crane smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. Very well. Keep your rifle and your pride, but remember what I said. He mounted his horse. You have until sunset. After that, the whole territory learns your secrets. He rode away without looking back. Rose stood at the window until the dust settled. Then her knees gave out, and she sank to the floor, the rifle clattering beside her. He knew. Crane knew everything about Boston. About the accusations. About the shame she'd been running from. And now he was going to use it to destroy her and Jacob both. She didn't know how long she sat there before the door burst open. Rose. Jacob was across the room in 3 strides, pulling her up, his hands gripping her shoulders. I saw riders from the North Ridge. What happened? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt. Then what? He stopped, seeing her face. Rose, talk to me. Crane was here. Her voice sounded strange, distant. He knows about Boston, about the theft charges. He's going to tell everyone unless I leave. Jacob's hands tightened on her shoulders. What theft charges? I told you, I was accused of stealing a necklace. It wasn't true, but I know it wasn't true. You don't understand. Rose pulled away from him. There's a letter, from Mrs. Harrington. She wrote about what happened and Crane has it. He's going to show everyone. He's going to tell them I'm a criminal. Let him. Rose stared at him. What? Let him tell whatever story he wants. Jacob's voice was hard. I don't care what people think. I don't care what they say. You're not leaving. Jacob, this isn't just about me. If Crane destroys your reputation... My reputation was destroyed 15 years ago when I stopped talking to everyone in the territory. He caught her hands in his. Rose, listen to me. Whatever you did or didn't do in Boston doesn't matter. You're here now. You're part of this fight, and I'm not letting Crane win by driving you away. But the land? To hell with the land. The words hung between them. Rose searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. You'd lose everything. I'd lose everything if you left too. The admission hit her like a physical blow. Jacob's eyes widened slightly, like he hadn't meant to say it. I didn't mean, he started. Yes, you did. Silence stretched between them. Rose was acutely aware of how close they were standing, how warm his hands felt around hers, how his eyes had darkened into something she couldn't quite name. Jacob, we should focus on Crane. He released her hands, abruptly stepping back. He gave you until sunset. Yes. Then we don't have much time. He moved to the window, checking the road. We need to get ahead of this. Tell our side before he tells his. How? We go to town. We face them together. Jacob turned to look at her. Can you do that? Rose thought about Mrs. Harwell's sneering face, about the whispers and stares, about standing in front of people who would believe the worst about her no matter what she said. I can do it. Good. He grabbed his hat. We leave now, before Crane can poison any more wells. The ride to Silver Creek felt shorter this time, or maybe it just felt that way because Rose's heart was pounding so fast she could barely breathe. Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store. People were already gathering, drawn by the sight of his wagon, by the stranger at his side, by the promise of drama. Whatever happens in there, Jacob said quietly, stay close to me. I'm not afraid. I know, but stay close anyway. They climbed down together. The crowd parted as they walked toward the store, whispers following them like shadows. Eli met them at the door. His face was gray. You heard, Jacob said. Crane's been talking all morning. He says... Eli glanced at Rose. He says you're harboring a fugitive, that Miss Thornton is wanted for theft in Boston. That's a lie. I know that, but the town doesn't. Then we tell them the truth. Eli shook his head. Jacob, you haven't spoken more than 10 words to anyone here in 15 years. Why would they believe you now? Because I'm going to make them believe me. Jacob pushed past Eli into the store. Rose followed her, chin high, despite the terror clawing at her chest. The main room was crowded. Farmers, merchants, their wives and children, half the town seemed to have gathered, drawn by the promise of scandal. Mrs. Harwell stood near the front, her face twisted with vindictive pleasure, and in the center of it all, Victor Crane. Ah, Jacob, so good of you to join us. Crane's smile was razor sharp. I was just telling everyone about your house guest. I heard what you were telling them. Jacob's voice carried across the room. And I'm here to tell them the truth. The truth, Crane laughed. The truth is that this woman is a criminal, a thief who fled Boston rather than face justice, and you've been sheltering her in your home. I have been sheltering her because she had nowhere else to go, because someone forged a letter in my name and brought her here under false pretenses. Jacob's eyes swept the room. Someone in this town. Someone who's been manipulating all of us. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. That's quite an accusation, Crane said smoothly. Do you have any proof? Do you? Jacob stepped forward. You claim Rose is a thief. Where's your proof? A letter from a woman who's never met me. The word of people 1,000 miles away who have every reason to lie. Mrs. Harrington is a respected. Mrs. Harrington's son is the one who stole that necklace. Rose's voice rang out before she could stop herself. He needed money for gambling debts. He took the necklace, he planted it in my room, and when I tried to tell the truth, he made sure no one would believe me. Silence. Every eye in the room turned to her. That's a convenient story, Crane said, but you have no proof either. I have the truth. And anyone who cares to look into it will find that Marcus Harrington has a gambling problem, that he owed money to dangerous people, and that the necklace was sold in a Boston pawn shop 3 days after I was dismissed. Rose didn't know if that last part was true, but she saw the flicker of uncertainty in Crane's eyes. Even if that were true, Crane said, it doesn't change the fact that you came here under false pretenses, that you wormed your way into this man's home using a forged letter. A letter that you helped forge, Jacob said. The room went utterly still. That's a serious accusation, Crane said quietly. It's the truth. Eli Porter wrote to a mail-order bride agency. He used my name without my permission. But the financial records, the receipts that show I supposedly paid for Rose's passage, those came from somewhere else. From someone who reads every piece of mail that goes through this town's post office. You can't prove, can't I? Jacob stepped closer to Crane. The postmaster works for you. Everyone knows it. You've been reading people's letters for years, gathering information, looking for ways to pressure them into selling their land. This is absurd. Is it? Jacob turned to the crowd. How many of you have had private business become public knowledge? How many of you have wondered how Victor Crane always seems to know exactly when you're vulnerable? Rose watched faces change, doubt creeping in where certainty had been. You're desperate, McAllister. Crane's voice was harder now, throwing accusations because you know I've caught you red-handed. The only thing you've caught is yourself. Jacob faced the crowd again. Rose Thornton is not a criminal. She's a woman who was betrayed by people she trusted, who lost everything through no fault of her own, and who came west looking for a fresh start. Just like half the people in this room. His eyes moved across the faces watching him. I spent 15 years hiding from all of you, hiding from life, hiding from anything that might make me feel something. And you know what Crane was counting on that. He was counting on me being too broken, too isolated, too far gone to fight back. Jacob's voice grew stronger. But Rose changed that. She showed up at my fence with nothing but a lie and a hope, and she refused to give up. She refused to let me give up. And I'll be damned if I let Victor Crane destroy her for having the courage I didn't have. Rose felt tears prick her eyes. So here's the truth. Jacob's voice rang through the silent room. Rose Thornton is staying at my ranch, not as a charity case, not as a mail-order bride, as my partner, my equal, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. No one spoke. Then from somewhere in the back of the room someone started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Others joined in. Within moments the room was filled with applause. Crane's face was a mask of fury. This isn't over, McAllister. Yes, it is. Jacob stepped closer, dropping his voice so only Crane could hear. Come near my property again, threaten Rose again, and I'll make sure everyone in this territory knows about every dirty deal you've ever made. I may have been silent for 15 years, but I wasn't blind. And I remember everything. For the first time, Rose saw fear in Victor Crane's eyes. You're making a mistake, Crane said. The only mistake I made was letting you think you could push me around. Jacob took Rose's hand. Come on, we're going home. They walked out of the store together past the murmuring crowd, past Mrs. Harwell's stunned face, past Eli, who was grinning like a fool. The ride home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet, lighter, easier. You didn't have to do that, Rose said finally. Yes, I did. You exposed yourself. After 15 years of silence, you stood up in front of the whole town and told the truth. Jacob glanced at her. It was past time. What happens now? I don't know. Crane won't give up easily. But we heard him today. We showed people they don't have to be afraid of him. Jacob's hand found hers on the seat between them. Rose looked at their joined hands, at the way his rough fingers intertwined with hers, at the warmth spreading through her chest, despite everything. Jacob. What you said in there, about me being your partner. I meant it. I know. She took a breath. But is that all I am, a partner? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. The ranch came into view ahead, golden in the afternoon light. I don't know what you are, he said finally. I don't know what we are. But I know that when Crane threatened you, I wanted to kill him. I know that when you said you might leave something inside me broke. And I know that for the first time in 15 years, I'm thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. He pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her. Is that enough? For now? Rose looked into his gray eyes and saw something she hadn't seen before. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. "It's enough," she said. "For now." Jacob nodded. He didn't smile. She wasn't sure he remembered how, but something in his face softened. "Good." He climbed down and came around to help her. "Because I have a feeling the fight with Crane is just beginning. Then we'll fight it together." "Together," he agreed. And as they walked toward the house, their hands still intertwined. Rose allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found the home she'd been searching for. Even if she'd found it by accident. Even if it came with enemies and complications and a broken man who was slowly learning to feel again. Even if nothing about it was what she'd expected. It was hers, and she would fight to keep it. The fever came without warning. One moment, Rose was hanging laundry in the summer heat, and the next, she was on her knees, the world spinning around her like a drunk carousel. "Rose!" Jacob's voice came from far away. She tried to answer, but her throat was on fire, and the words wouldn't form. Strong arms lifted her. She felt herself being carried, felt the coolness of the house wash over her burning skin. Then, everything went dark. When she woke, it was night. Jacob sat beside the bed, his face haggard in the lamplight. "What happened?" "You collapsed." His voice was rough. "The doctor came. He says it's scarlet fever. There's been an outbreak in town." Rose tried to sit up. The room tilted violently, and she fell back. "Don't move." Jacob's hand caught her shoulder. "You need to rest." "How long was I out?" 6 hours. 6 hours. Rose closed her eyes, trying to fight down the panic rising in her chest. She'd seen scarlet fever before. She'd seen what it could do. "The doctor," she managed. "What did he say?" "He said you're young and strong. He said if the fever breaks in the next few days, you should recover. And if it doesn't..." Jacob didn't answer. But Rose saw the fear in his eyes, and she understood. "You should stay away from me," she said. "The fever spreads. I'm not leaving you." "Jacob," I said, "I'm not leaving." His jaw set in that stubborn line she'd come to know so well. "Whatever happens, we face it together. That's what partners do." Rose wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being foolish, that there was no point in both of them dying. But she was so tired, and his hand was warm on hers, and for once in her life, she let someone else take care of her. "Stay," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The next 3 days were a blur of fever and dreams, and Jacob's steady presence at her side. Rose drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she saw her mother dead these 16 years, sitting at the foot of the bed. Sometimes she saw Marcus Harrington, his face twisted with cruelty, reaching for her with grasping hands. Sometimes she saw Emily, a woman she'd never met, standing in the doorway, watching her with sad, knowing eyes. But always, always, she heard Jacob's voice. "Stay with me, Rose. Don't you dare leave. Not now. Not after everything." His hands bathed her burning face with cool water. His arms held her when the shaking got too bad. His voice pulled her back from the edge of darkness again and again. On the third night, the fever broke. Rose woke to find herself drenched in sweat, the terrible heat finally receding from her body. Jacob was slumped in the chair beside her bed, asleep for what looked like the first time in days. She watched him for a long moment. The lines of exhaustion carved into his face, the stubble that had become a beard, the dark circles under his eyes. He'd stayed. Through everything he'd stayed. "You're awake." His eyes had opened gray and bloodshot but alert. "The fever broke," Rose said. Her voice came out as a croak. "I know, I felt it." He leaned forward, pressing his hand to her forehead. "You're cool. Thank God. Thank God." "You look terrible." "You almost died." "I'm allowed to look terrible." Rose laughed weakly. It hurt her throat, but she couldn't help it. "What did I miss?" Jacob's expression shifted. Something dark crossed his face. What? Rose tried to sit up. What happened? It can wait. You need to rest. Jacob, tell me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, Crane made his move, while you were sick. What kind of move? He's claiming I owe the bank money, that I took out a loan 10 years ago and never paid it back. Jacob's voice was hard. He says if I don't pay by the end of the week, he's taking the ranch. Rose's blood ran cold. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie, but he's got papers, documents with what looks like my signature. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. He must have forged them, just like he forged your letter. Can you prove they're fake? I don't know. I've been here with you. I haven't had time to... Then we get you time. Rose pushed herself upright, ignoring the weakness in her limbs. We fight this. Rose, you almost died. You're not fighting anything. The hell I'm not. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. The room swayed, but she forced herself to stay upright. Crane waited until I was sick to make his move. He thought you'd be alone. He thought you'd cave without me. Rose, was he right? The question hung between them. Jacob's jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. No, he said finally. He wasn't right. Then stop trying to protect me and let me help you. Before Jacob could respond, they heard hoofbeats outside. Stay here. Jacob grabbed his rifle and moved to the door. Like hell. Rose stumbled after him, grabbing the doorframe for support. Through the window she could see a wagon approaching. A woman at the reins. 2 small children huddled beside her. Who is that? Rose asked. Jacob's expression shifted from wariness to confusion. I don't know. The wagon pulled to a stop at the fence. The woman climbed down slowly, her movements stiff with exhaustion. When she turned, Rose saw a face that could have been her own 3 weeks ago, pale, desperate, running out of hope. Mr. McAllister. The woman's voice was raw. Mr. Jacob McAllister. Who's asking? My name is Hannah Wells. The woman's voice broke. I'm supposed to be your neighbor's bride, Mr. Caleb Turner, but when I got to town they said he never sent for me. They said it was all a lie. Rose felt her heart stop. Jacob stepped forward slowly. The Westward Hearts Agency. Hannah's face crumpled. How did you know? Because they did the same thing to someone else. Jacob turned to look at Rose. You're not the only one, Rose. This isn't just about me. This is bigger than we thought. Rose moved past Jacob, her weakness forgotten. Mrs. Wells, how many children do you have? 2, Tommy and Lily. Hannah's voice shook. They're all I have left. My husband died 2 years ago. I spent everything I had on the passage. I thought we were going to have a home. Rose looked at the children. A boy of maybe 8, a girl no more than 5. Both of them watching with the wary eyes of children who'd learned not to trust. Come inside, Rose said. All of you. You're safe here. Rose, you're barely standing. Jacob caught her arm. You need to rest. These children need food more than I need rest. Rose met his eyes. We have room, we have supplies, and we have an obligation. An obligation. Someone brought this woman here the same way they brought me, using lies, using hope as a weapon. Rose's voice hardened. We can't save everyone, but we can save her. Jacob looked at Hannah, at the children, at Rose's pale but determined face. All right, he said finally. But if you collapse again, I'm tying you to the bed. Fair enough. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Rose made food while Jacob tended to Hannah's exhausted horse. The children ate like they hadn't seen a proper meal in weeks because Rose realized they probably hadn't. Hannah told her story in fragments. Her husband had been a carpenter. Good man. Died in an accident at a construction site. The insurance company had refused to pay. She'd sold everything to keep the children fed, but it wasn't enough. The agency seemed like Providence. Hannah said, her voice hollow. A chance to start over. A home for my children. I should have known it was too good to be true. You couldn't have known, Rose said gently. I believed the same lies. But you're still here. You and Mr. McAllister. It's complicated. Rose glanced toward the door where Jacob had disappeared to check the property. It's not what you think. He cares about you. What? The way he looks at you. Hannah's eyes softened. The way he watches to make sure you're all right. That's not nothing, Miss Thornton. Rose didn't know how to respond to that. What about Mr. Turner? She asked instead. The man you were supposed to marry. What about him? Has anyone contacted him? Does he know what happened? Hannah shook her head. I don't know. I was so humiliated when I found out the truth. I just wanted to disappear. You can't disappear. You have children who need you. Rose leaned forward. But you also can't stay hidden forever. Eventually, you'll need to face this. Face what the whole town already knows. I was duped. They look at me like I'm a fool. Then prove them wrong. Rose's voice was fierce. I spent my whole life letting other people define me, letting their accusations and judgments shape who I was. And you know what? It nearly destroyed me. Don't make the same mistake. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then, how do you do it? How do you keep fighting when everything seems hopeless? Rose thought about Jacob, about the way he'd sat beside her bed for 3 days, about the way he'd stood up in front of the whole town and defended her. You find something worth fighting for, she said, and you don't let go. The door opened. Jacob stepped inside, his face grim. We have a problem. Another one. Crane's men. I spotted them on the ridge. They're watching the ranch. Rose's blood ran cold. How many? 4, maybe 5. They're keeping their distance, but they're there. What do they want? I don't know. But whatever it is, they're willing to wait for it. Jacob moved to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look out. We need to be ready. Ready for what? Anything. The night passed without incident, but no one slept well. Rose kept waking from nightmares, her fever-weakened body trembling with fear and exhaustion. Hannah sat up with the children, refusing to let them out of her sight. And Jacob paced the house like a caged animal, rifle in hand, checking the windows every few minutes. By dawn, Rose had made a decision. We need to go to town, she said over breakfast. Jacob looked at her sharply. You're not strong enough. I'm strong enough for what needs to be done. Rose set down her coffee cup. Crane is making his move. He's got forged documents. He's got men watching the ranch, and he thinks we're isolated. We need to show him we're not. How? We gather allies. Talk to Eli. Talk to anyone else who's had trouble with Crane. Rose's mind was racing. And we find Caleb Turner. Turner, why? Because he's another victim. Because if we can show that Crane's scheme goes beyond just you and me, we have a better chance of exposing him. Jacob considered this. It's risky. If Crane realizes what we're doing, he'll try to stop us. I know. Rose met his eyes. But what's the alternative? We wait here while he tightens the noose. We let him take everything you've built. I don't care about what I've built. I care about keeping you safe. The words hung between them. Rose felt her chest tighten. Jacob. I know. He held up a hand. I know that's not what you want to hear. I know you don't want to be protected. But Rose, 3 days ago, I thought I was going to watch you die. 3 days ago, I realized that losing you would destroy me more completely than losing this land ever could. Rose's breath caught. So yes. Jacob continued, his voice rough. I care more about your safety than about fighting Crane. But I also know that you won't be safe, that none of us will be safe until he's stopped. So we do this your way. We go to town. We gather allies. We fight. Together. Together. Rose nodded slowly. Then she turned to Hannah. Can you stay here with the children? Keep the doors locked, don't let anyone in. Of course. And if Crane's men come? Hannah's eyes hardened. Let them try. For the first time, Rose saw steel beneath the woman's exhaustion. Good. She would need that steel before this was over. The ride to Silver Creek was tense. Rose could feel watchers' eyes on them the whole way, though she never caught sight of anyone. Jacob kept one hand on his rifle, his jaw tight with concentration. If this goes wrong, he started. It won't. But if it does, if something happens to me, I need you to take Hannah and the children and run. Get as far from here as you can. Nothing's going to happen to you. Rose. I'm not running. She turned to face him fully. I spent my whole life running. From Boston. From my past. From anyone who might hurt me. I'm done. Whatever happens, I'm staying right here. Jacob looked at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, something Rose had never seen before. I love you. The words hit her like a thunderbolt. What? I love you. His voice was rough but certain. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you stood at my fence and refused to leave. Maybe when you picked up that rifle and told Crane's men to get off my property. Maybe when I sat beside your bed for 3 days and prayed to a God I'd stopped believing in. He pulled the wagon to a stop. I know this isn't the time. I know we're in the middle of a fight and everything's falling apart. But I needed you to know, in case, don't say in case. Rose's voice shook. Don't you dare. Rose. I love you too, you impossible man. Tears were streaming down her face. I love you even though you're stubborn and closed off, and you've spent 15 years hiding from life. I love you because underneath all that grief, there's a man worth loving. And I'm not going to let Crane or anyone else take that away from me. Jacob stared at her. Then he pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce, and full of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. We should go, Rose said shakily. We should. Neither of them moved. Later, Jacob said, his voice rough. When this is over, we talk about this. About us. About what happens next. Later, Rose agreed. He kissed her once more, quick, hard, promising, and then took up the reins. They reached town to find it in chaos. People were gathered in the street, voices raised in anger. Rose could see Eli's store at the center of the commotion, surrounded by a growing crowd. What's happening? She asked. I don't know. Jacob pushed through the crowd, pulling Rose behind him. Eli, what's going on? Eli's face was pale when he turned to face them. It's Crane. He's called in debts from half the town, demanding payment by the end of the week or he takes everything. He can't do that. He's doing it. Eli grabbed Jacob's arm. He's got documents for everyone. Loans, mortgages, agreements. Half of them are probably forged, but people are scared. They don't know what to believe. Rose looked around at the frightened faces, families who'd worked their whole lives for what they had now being told it could all be taken away. This isn't about you anymore, she said quietly to Jacob. This is about all of them. I know. Then we have to do something. Jacob stepped forward, climbing onto a nearby wagon so the crowd could see him. Listen to me. His voice carried across the noise. All of you, listen. The crowd fell silent, turning to face the man who'd been a ghost for 15 years. Crane is lying to you. Those documents he's waving around, they're forgeries. I know because he tried the same thing on me. He's been manipulating this town for years, reading our mail, learning our secrets, using them against us. How do we know you're telling the truth? Someone shouted. Because I have nothing to gain from lying. I've spent 15 years hiding from all of you, hiding from life, hiding from anything that might hurt me. Jacob's voice grew stronger. But I'm done hiding, and I'm asking you to stop hiding too. Rose watched the crowd's faces shift. Doubt giving way to hope. Fear giving way to anger. He can't take all of us, Rose called out. Not if we stand together. Not if we refuse to be afraid. Easy for you to say, Mrs. Harwell sneered. You're nobody. You don't have anything to lose. I have everything to lose. Rose stepped forward. I came here with nothing. No money, no family, no future. And I found something worth fighting for. I found people worth fighting with. She looked at Jacob standing tall above the crowd. Crane wants us to believe we're alone, that we have to face him one at a time. But we're not alone. We never were. And if we fight together, you'll what? A cold voice cut through the murmurs. You'll defeat the inevitable. Victor Crane pushed through the crowd, his men fanning out behind him. This is touching, he said. Really, the lonely rancher and his criminal bride rallying the peasants to revolt. He smiled. But you're too late. The railroad committee meets tomorrow. And when they do, they'll confirm my land acquisitions, all of them, including your precious ranch McAllister. We'll see about that, Jacob said. Yes. Crane's smile widened. We will. He turned and walked away, his men closing ranks behind him. The crowd stood frozen, fear settling back over them like a shroud. Rose looked at Jacob. He looked at her. Tomorrow. They had until tomorrow to stop Crane, to expose his scheme to save everything they'd built. And Rose had no idea how they were going to do it. But she knew one thing for certain: they would find a way. Together they would find a way. The night before the railroad committee meeting, no one slept. Rose sat at Jacob's table, surrounded by papers they'd gathered from Eli, from frightened townspeople, from anyone willing to speak against Crane. Her hands were still weak from the fever, but her mind was sharp. It's not enough, she said finally. Jacob looked up from the document he was studying. What do you mean? We have testimony. We have patterns. We have people willing to say Crane cheated them. Rose pushed the papers away. But we don't have proof. Nothing solid enough to stop the committee from approving his claims. Then we find proof. Where we've searched everywhere. Not everywhere. Jacob stood slowly. There's one place we haven't looked. Where? Crane's office, at the bank. Rose stared at him. You want to break into the bank? I want to find the evidence that proves he's been forging documents for years, and I'm willing to bet it's locked in his safe. That's insane. Probably. Jacob met her eyes. But do you have a better idea? Rose wanted to argue, wanted to tell him there had to be another way, but she'd been thinking the same thing for hours, turning possibilities over in her mind, and kept coming back to the same conclusion. If we get caught, we won't get caught. Jacob. I know that bank, he said quietly. I helped build it. 20 years ago, before Crane bought it, I did carpentry work on the back office. I know where the weak points are. That was 20 years ago. Some things don't change. He moved to stand in front of her. Rose, I'm not asking you to come with me. In fact, I'd rather you stayed here. Not a chance. You're still recovering. And you're still stubborn. We're both going, or neither of us is. Jacob looked at her for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. All right, both of us. He grabbed his coat. But we go now, while Crane's men are watching the ranch. They'll think we're still inside. How do we get past them? There's a ravine behind the property. It leads to the old mining road. We can circle around and approach town from the north. Rose stood, ignoring the weakness in her legs. Then let's go. The journey to Silver Creek took twice as long as usual, moving through darkness along paths Jacob seemed to know by instinct. Rose stumbled more than once, her body still fighting the remnants of fever, but she refused to slow down. They reached the town just after midnight. The streets were empty, everyone locked inside waiting for tomorrow's reckoning. "The bank is on the corner," Jacob whispered. "Crane keeps a guard at the front, but the back should be clear." "Should be. We'll find out." They moved through the shadows, keeping close to buildings. Rose's heart pounded so loud she was sure someone would hear it. The back of the bank was dark. Jacob studied the wall for a moment, then pointed to a window on the second floor. "There. That's the office. It's 20 feet up. There's a drain pipe." He tested it with his weight. "Should hold." "Should." Only one way to find out. Jacob climbed first, moving with surprising agility for a man his size. Rose followed her hands, slick with sweat, praying the pipe wouldn't give way. They made it to the window. Jacob pulled a knife from his belt and worked it into the frame. A soft click, and the window swung open. "Stay close," he breathed. "And stay quiet." Crane's office was exactly what Rose had expected. Expensive furniture, leather chairs, and in the corner, a massive iron safe. "Can you open it?" she whispered. "I can try." Jacob knelt before the safe, pressing his ear to the door. "My father was a locksmith, before the war. He taught me a few things." Rose watched the door while Jacob worked. Minutes stretched into eternity. She could hear her own breathing, the tiny clicks of the safe mechanism, the pounding of blood in her ears. Then, got it. The safe door swung open. Inside was exactly what they'd hoped for. Ledgers, documents, pages and pages of forged signatures, falsified loans, records of every dirty deal Crane had ever made. "This is everything," Rose breathed. "This is—" "Who's there?" Light flooded the room. Rose spun to see a guard in the doorway, lantern in one hand, pistol in the other. "Don't move," the guard said. "Either of you." Jacob stepped in front of Rose. "We're not here to steal anything." "Tell that to the sheriff." The guard cocked his pistol. "Mr. Crane's going to want to hear about this." Rose's mind raced. They were so close. All the evidence they needed was right there, and they were going to lose everything because of one guard. "Wait," she said. "Please, just look at what's in this safe." "I don't care what's in—" "Your sister," Rose cut him off. "Sally, right? She lost her farm last year. Crane said she'd defaulted on a loan." The guard's expression flickered. "How do you know about Sally?" "Because there are records in this safe. Records that prove the loan was a forgery, that Crane stole her land using documents she never signed." The guard's pistol wavered. "Look at them," Rose pressed. "Just look. If I'm lying, you can turn us in. But if I'm telling the truth, why would you help Sally? Because Crane did the same thing to my husband, to half this town." Rose stepped forward slowly. "We're not criminals. We're people trying to stop a criminal. Please, just give us a chance." The longest silence of Rose's life stretched between them. Then the guard lowered his pistol. "Show me." 20 minutes later, they left the bank through the front door. The guard, whose name was Thomas, carried half the evidence himself. "I always knew something was wrong," he said as they walked. "The way Mr. Crane operated, the way people's debts suddenly doubled. But I needed the work, and I was afraid to ask questions." "You're asking now," Jacob said. "That's what matters." They reached Eli's store just as dawn began to break. Rose pounded on the door until a bleary-eyed Eli appeared. "What in God's name?" "We have it." Rose pushed past him into the store. "We have everything. Every forged document, every falsified loan, every piece of evidence we need to destroy Crane." Eli's eyes widened as Jacob spread the papers across his counter. "This is—" He picked up a ledger, scanning the pages. "This is a confession, written in his own hand. Lists of bribes, threats, every person he's cheated for the past 10 years. "Can we use it?" Jacob asked. "Use it? This will put him in prison for life." Eli looked up, a fierce joy spreading across his face. "The committee meets in 3 hours. We need to be there, all of us." "What about Hannah?" Rose asked. "And the children?" "I'll send someone to the ranch," Eli said. Bring them to town. They should see this. Rose nodded. Then she turned to Jacob. We did it. Not yet. His jaw was tight. Crane still has men. He's still dangerous. This isn't over until he's in chains. Then let's finish it. The committee meeting was held in the town hall. By the time they arrived, the room was packed. Farmers, merchants, families, everyone whose life had been touched by Crane's corruption. Crane himself sat at the front looking smug and confident. His lawyer shuffled papers beside him. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman began, we're here to review land claims along the proposed railroad route. Mr. Crane has submitted. Before you continue, Jacob stood, his voice carrying across the room. I have evidence that must be considered. Crane's eyes narrowed. This is highly irregular. So is fraud, Jacob replied. So is theft. So is destroying the lives of honest people to line your own pockets. He walked to the front of the room and laid the ledgers on the committee's table. These are Victor Crane's personal records. They document 10 years of forged documents, falsified loans, and bribery. Every land claim he's submitted to this committee is based on lies. The room erupted. People shouted, demanded to see the evidence, accused Crane of crimes they'd long suspected, but never been able to prove. This is outrageous. Crane rose to his feet. These documents are forgeries themselves. McAllister broke into my office and planted them. Is that so? Rose stepped forward. Then perhaps you can explain why your own handwriting appears on every page, why your personal seal marks these documents, why your guard, your own employee, will testify that he watched us remove them from your safe. Thomas stepped forward, pale but determined. It's true. Everything they're saying. I worked for Mr. Crane for 3 years, and I watched him destroy people. I watched him steal their land, their livelihoods, their futures. And I was too afraid to stop him. You're a traitor, Crane snarled. No, sir. I'm finally doing the right thing. The committee chairman held up his hand for silence. Mr. Crane, these are serious allegations. We'll need time to review. There's no time. Rose's voice rang out. The railroad committee makes its decision today. If you approve Crane's claims without investigating, you become complicit in his crimes. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing left to lose. Rose faced the committee squarely. I came to this territory as a mail-order bride sent here by a forged letter abandoned by an agency that stole my money. I was called a criminal, a thief, a woman of no worth. And I discovered that Victor Crane was behind all of it. She stepped closer to the committee's table. But I also discovered something else. I discovered that the people of this town are not cowards. That when they're given a chance to fight back, they will. Look around you, gentlemen. Look at the faces of the people Crane has hurt. They're here because they believe that justice is possible. Don't prove them wrong. Silence fell over the room. The chairman looked at his fellow committee members. Something passed between them, a decision reached without words. Mr. Crane, the chairman said finally, these allegations are too serious to ignore. We are suspending consideration of your land claims pending a full investigation. Furthermore, we are recommending that the territorial marshal be notified immediately. You can't do this. We just did. The chairman stood. This meeting is adjourned. Crane's face twisted with fury. He lunged forward, knocking papers from the table, reaching for Jacob with murder in his eyes. You've destroyed everything. Jacob caught Crane's wrist, twisting it behind his back. No, you destroyed yourself. We just made sure everyone could see it. The sheriff stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Victor Crane, you're under arrest. This isn't over, McAllister. I have friends. I have connections. You'll pay for this. Maybe, Jacob said. But you'll be in prison while I'm paying, and that's good enough for me. As the sheriff led Crane away, the room exploded into celebration. People embraced, wept, shouted with joy, years of fear and oppression lifting in a single moment. Rose felt tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "No." Jacob pulled her close. "You did it. You gave them courage. You gave them a reason to fight. I couldn't have done any of it without you." "I know." He smiled a real smile, the first she'd ever seen. "That's why we make a good team." Before Rose could respond, a small body crashed into her legs. "Miss Rose." She looked down to see Lily Wells, Hannah's daughter, beaming up at her. "We came to see the bad man get caught. Mama said you saved us." Hannah approached more slowly, Tommy's hand in hers. "She's right. You did save us. All of us." "I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing anyone can do." Eli appeared at Jacob's elbow. "There's someone here to see you, both of you." Rose turned to see a man standing nervously near the door, young, maybe 30, with honest eyes and work-worn hands. "Mr. McAllister, Miss Thornton." The man removed his hat. "I'm Caleb Turner. I understand a woman was sent here claiming to be my bride." Hannah went pale. "She's right here," Rose said gently. "And she has 2 wonderful children who need a stable home. Would you like to meet them?" Caleb's eyes moved to Hannah. Something passed between them, recognition perhaps, or possibility. "Ma'am." He nodded respectfully. "I'm sorry for what happened, for what you went through. I never sent that letter, but I wish I had." "Why?" Hannah's voice was barely a whisper. "Because I've been alone for 5 years. Because I've been praying for someone to help me raise my own children. Because—" He stopped, embarrassed. "Because you look like someone worth knowing." Hannah's cheeks flushed. "Maybe," Rose said, smiling, "you two should talk. Properly. Without everyone watching." She steered Jacob away, leaving Hannah and Caleb standing awkwardly together. "Playing matchmaker now?" Jacob asked. "Just giving hope a chance." They walked outside into the morning sun. The town was transformed not in appearance, but in spirit. People nodded at them as they passed, smiled, called out thanks. "Strange," Jacob said quietly. "I spent 15 years hiding from these people. Now they're treating me like a hero." "You are a hero." "I broke into a bank. For the right reasons. That doesn't usually count." Rose stopped walking. She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "Jacob McAllister, you spent 15 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. You convinced yourself you didn't deserve happiness, didn't deserve love, didn't deserve anything but isolation and grief." "Rose." "Let me finish." She squeezed his hands. "I came here by accident, sent by a lie, carrying my own guilt and shame. I thought I was worthless. I thought I'd never matter to anyone. You matter to me. I know. And you matter to me. More than I ever thought possible." She took a breath. "So what do we do now? Now that Crane's defeated, now that the town is safe, now that there's no crisis forcing us together." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I've been thinking about that. All night while we were gathering evidence, while we were breaking into banks and confronting criminals, I kept thinking about tomorrow. And I realized something." He pulled her closer. "I don't want to go back to the way things were. I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want to spend another 15 years hiding from life." "What do you want?" "You." The word was simple, absolute. "I want you, Rose. Not as a partner in crisis. Not as a temporary arrangement. I want you as my wife, my family, my home." Rose felt her heart stop. "Is that a proposal?" "It's a declaration." Jacob's gray eyes burned into hers. "Marry me, Rose. Not because a letter told you to. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Marry me because you choose to. Because you want to build a life with a stubborn, broken rancher who doesn't deserve you but will spend every day trying to." "Jacob, I know I'm not much. I know I'm scarred and difficult, and I spent too many years forgetting how to be human. But you taught me how to feel again. You taught me how to hope. And if you'll have me, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Tears were streaming down Rose's face. "You impossible man. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." She threw her arms around his neck. "It's a yes, and a yes, and 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, right there in the middle of Silver Creek's main street, with half the town watching, and the other half pretending not to. When they finally broke apart, Rose was laughing and crying at the same time. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now," Jacob took her hand. "Now we go home, our home, and we start building the life we both thought we'd lost." They walked toward the wagon hand in hand. Around them, the town continued its celebration, the beginning of a new era for Silver Creek. Eli caught them at the wagon. "You're not staying for the festivities." "We've had enough excitement," Jacob said. "Besides, there's a woman and 2 children at my ranch who need to know everything's all right." "Our ranch," Rose corrected. Jacob looked at her. "Our ranch." "I'll spread the word about the wedding," Eli called after them. "The whole territory will want to come." "Keep it small," Rose shouted back. "Just the people who matter." "In this town, that's everyone." They drove home slowly, savoring the journey. The ranch appeared as the sun climbed higher, its buildings golden in the morning light. Hannah ran out to meet them, the children at her heels. "What happened?" "We heard shouting in town, and then someone came to say Crane was arrested, but they didn't explain." "It's over," Rose said, climbing down from the wagon. "Crane's going to prison. The land is safe. Everyone's safe." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You can thank me by staying." Rose took her hands. "We have room here, until you figure out what's next, until you and Caleb decide if there's something worth exploring." "You met Caleb. He seems like a good man, nervous and awkward and obviously smitten with you." Rose smiled. "Give him a chance. Sometimes the best things come from unexpected places." Hannah looked at Jacob, then back at Rose. "I suppose you'd know." "I suppose I would." That evening, they all sat together on Jacob's porch, his and Rose's porch, now watching the sun set over the mountains. Hannah's children played in the yard, their laughter filling spaces that had been silent for too long. "I never thought this place would sound like this," Jacob said quietly. "Like what?" "Like a home." He put his arm around Rose. "Like somewhere people actually live." "It will sound like this forever now," Rose promised. "Children playing, friends visiting, life happening." "You're sure that's what you want?" "It's a big change from Boston." "Boston was never home." Rose leaned into him. "This is home. You are home." Jacob pressed a kiss to her hair. "I love you, Rose McAllister." "That's not my name yet." "It will be soon enough. I'm just practicing." Rose laughed. For the first time in years, the sound came easily. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The forged letter, the desperate hope, the man who'd wanted nothing to do with her and ended up becoming everything. She thought about the people they'd helped, the town they'd saved, the future they'd fought for. And she thought about tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that, stretching out like an endless road through beautiful, unforgiving country. "What are you thinking about?" Jacob asked. "The future." "What about it?" Rose looked at him, this stubborn, wounded, wonderful man who'd learned to love again. "I'm thinking it's going to be extraordinary." Jacob smiled, that rare, transforming smile that still made her heart skip. "With you," he said, "I believe it." The sun dipped below the mountains. Stars emerged one by one, and on a ranch in Wyoming territory, surrounded by people who'd become family, Rose Thornton finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not just a home, not just a husband, but the courage to believe she deserved them both. And that made all the difference.